be here. I know that probably most of you know of Astra. You probably don't know who I am, really. Who is this man addressing you now? But nevertheless, it's a real pleasure to be here. And again, thank you so much for tuning in this evening. It is a real privilege to be speaking to you all and to have the chance of sharing my work. So I do want to actually just take this opportunity very quickly to express my sincere thanks to Guillemot Press for this rare opportunity to have my work published to a wider audience, and for doing such a truly wonderful job in the production. It's amazing to hold, even if I say so myself. I'm really pleased. I also would actually like to express a public thanks to Chloe Proctor. I don't know if she's here, but nevertheless, it was her original tweet that kind of brought this project to kind of wider attention. And I certainly wouldn't have had the confidence really to do it myself otherwise. So I'm especially grateful to Chloe. If she is listening, otherwise, let it be known that I'm very grateful to her. So normally launch events like this do indeed feature readings of newly published books by the authors. But if anyone has seen the online previews of my particular work, Signals, you realize that's not quite possible. It's a series of very pixelated images of very distant stars, accompanied by sequences of geometrical glyphs. Beautiful is perhaps not quite the word that might come to mind when you view them, but something more enigmatic, more strange, more alien, I guess. So therefore, what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time explaining something of the background of my work, which is indeed perhaps rather esoteric, before unpacking how the sequences themselves operate, for any of you who are keen to try and decipher them. And what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to be bold. I have images that I'd like to display and to share with you, which is rather more entertaining than just looking at a small screen of me amidst a grid, really. Some space-themed images, which I hope kind of will set the tone. I hope you can all see at least something on your screens right now. I hope Sarah nod vigorously if the answer is yes. Good. Okay, right. Well, let's begin then. So Signals is my attempt at writing a work of poetry in a schema known as Linkos. Now, Linkos can be summarized as perhaps less a full-blown language than a means of crafting mathematical and logical patterns for communicating information. Now, this is not in itself a new proposition. Our digital world, right here, right now, is built on these encoding mechanisms. But Linkos is very different because it starts with this really fascinating question. How can we communicate with beings with whom we have absolutely nothing in common? In other words, how shall we communicate with extraterrestrial beings, intelligent entities orbiting distant stars, who may wonder the question, are we alone as much as we do, really, and are listening out for any messages of contact? Now, Linkos was devised by Hans Freudenthal, a Dutch mathematician, in 1960. Freudenthal was a lover of puzzles and other mathematical games, and so his interest in this really seemingly exotic, esoteric question is perhaps a bit more understandable in this light. Now, Linkos was, of course, hardly the first attempt, I should stress, at devising a system for signaling alien observers. For instance, in the late 19th century, Joseph Johann von Littrow proposed to carve out giant flaming trenches in the Earth's surface, marking out a few sort of geometrical primitives, and so alerting any denizens of the Moon, Mars, or Venus as to our earthly presence. So while the habitability of Mars and Venus was surprisingly a far from settled question in 1960, would you believe? It seemed evident that a much more practical and capable means of signaling the cosmos would be afforded through using radio technology. This does assume, of course, that any alien listeners have radios of their own. But the operative assumption here is that radio emissions are by far the most powerful means of knowing the universe beyond one's own planet. So in short, if there are aliens out there in a position to communicate, radio is just about the only option to reach them, and vice versa. So then, in defaulting to radio transmissions, the remaining issue that we face concerns the nature of the message itself, of how electronic signals can be crafted to convey meaningful information. Now, as you might imagine, this is no trivial task, for it asks us to consider how we can create a message that can be deciphered with no contextualizing information whatsoever, and at the same time, still provide us with a useful and fair insight into the fundamental nature of the sender. As artists and poets, of which I'm sure many of us here are gathered right now, we all struggle endlessly to evoke aspects of human experience in all its unconquerable richness, contingency, and protean unfolding. So how on earth are we to distill down all of what it means to be human into a simple to understand message that can be deciphered accurately by alien beings? Linkos represented the first serious engagement with this impossibly demanding task. And Freudenthal certainly went about it with gutso. In his first volume on Linkos, he detailed a variety of mechanisms for communicating arithmetic, time, aspects of human discourse, as well as varied formulas for mass, space, and motion. The unwritten second part would have covered a means of thinking around, of communicating topics around matter, the earth, and the fundamentals of life, as well as further aspects concerning the kind of nuances of human behavior. So it might appear surprising at this point to note the sheer range of information that Freudenthal thought could be expressed using mathematics and logic alone. The recipient of a Linkos message would, at first, be shown patterns indicating numbers, and then simple examples of logic and arithmetic using these numbers. Such primitive statements would then be combined into more complex patterns that would be grouped into strange sounding words. These words would then be used to represent more abstract propositions such as good or bad, and then conversations and interactions between agents and objects whose state would evolve over time. The final Linkos message would then close with sequences demonstrating moral quandaries, sort of a morality planes, as Freudenthal described them. And this would show human beings working through complex dilemmas, notions of forgetting and remembering, and that it is easier to remember something that you prefer to forget than vice versa. And his idea was this would offer an insight into earthly life and the human condition. Now, Freudenthal never finished his Linkos project, but it did set the standard for many speculated and actual messages to the cosmos in the decades since. Linkos was not without its critics, of course, so it assumes that mathematics is universal, that aliens will understand numbers and arithmetic and logic in exactly the same way that we do. Moreover, we might argue in the case of Linkos very specifically, whether the tools of mathematics are truly capable, even with some creative interpretation, of conveying anything more than purely quantitative insights. So that is, whether alien listeners are going to understand that the logical propositions within Linkos represent not just these abstract statements of relation, but actually map on to concrete human and animal behaviors. Now, be that as it may, I admit I have found this particular aspect of Linkos to be the most fascinating of all. So many scientists and engineers have taken Linkos and used it as the basis for their own messages to the cosmos, but they largely eliminate any reference to human behavior and focus instead on conveying purely scientific information, so atomic structures, chemical sequences, the laws of physics, etc. Now, the aim is to depict patterns that alien scientists will recognize, and so map the meanings of the message onto known, ostensibly universal material behaviors. Depictions of human discourse, morality, and relationships, these are wholly left aside with all their vagaries and their uncertainties. And so while this is perhaps not an insensible decision, it is exactly these aspects that I wanted to explore further. So therefore, what we have in signals is effectively my own message to the cosmos. I think we could describe it as that. It's one that focuses on information that has nothing to do with science necessarily, and instead uses mathematical structures as encoded within Linkos to further Freudenthal's rather esoteric proposition that we can use mathematics and logic to convey elements of human life to alien beings. So just to describe the sort of basic structure of each kind of contained message within my book, we've got some more close-up visuals in just a second. Each message block in Signals is written as an algebraic statement. If you translated it into Latin, it would look like a series of letters and numbers and various kind of symbols in between. And each one is written as an unbroken string, but that is then mapped onto this 17 by 19 character grid. Now, each character in this grid is derived from a special noise-resistant alphabet that was devised originally by the astronomers Yvan Dutil and Stéphane Dumas in 1999 for their own Linkos-based message to the cosmos. I personally love this alphabet, for it seems to reflect the alien character of its intended recipients, and it makes us think about how we ourselves would attempt to decipher an alien communicate from beyond. Now, sitting alongside each individual message block is a raw data visual taken from the Kepler Space Telescope, which between 2009 and 2018 scanned the sky for stars with potentially habitable worlds. These images, I think, are beautifully alien in their own right. They seem so attenuated, as is appropriate for their extraordinarily remote targets. But they also make us acknowledge how tenuous signals from profoundly alien planets are already with us, glimpsed in the data as flickering shadows and transient points of light. So, with all of this then, all of this preamble stated, what does my own poetic message to the cosmos actually say? So at one level, it is a consciously playful endeavor. I make no claim whatsoever. You could actually use my message to communicate seriously with extraterrestrials, though I have to admit, I rather like to entertain the idea somehow. It's also worth stating that Signals is, like I alluded to earlier, a meditation really upon the very questions it raises. Again, how do we communicate what it means to be human to aliens with whom we have nothing in common? What would we include? How would we articulate it? And crucially, what would be left out? What would we fail to express? All of us here are rightfully aware of the need to acknowledge the complexity of human experience, and that no one message, no one point of view can speak for us all. In short, I think messaging aliens, or the idea of it at least, makes us think about questions that form the cornerstone of all artistic endeavor. And so the actual contents of any proposed attempts perhaps carry rather less significance here. In any case, I certainly like the idea of people reading Signals in the same way as would its alien recipients, forming their own conclusions in the process to interpret the abstract patterns within in their own way as it speaks to them. So this is why in part there is no Latin translation provided for the messages within Signals. It's something that's left for you to kind of decipher as much or little as you want. Now, having said that, I also acknowledge that it might feel like something of a cop-out if I end my talk right here, right now. So I am going to close by offering a narrative overview of my own message in Signals as a bit of a one-off, an exclusive right here, right now. I'll never speak of it again. So you can take it as perhaps a sort of as close to a reading of sorts as I can reasonably offer to you. And again, I'm going to keep it fairly dry in some respect, because I want you to be able to impart what you feel is appropriate here. Well, let's start. Let's have a go. So here's the first message then. What it does is it delineates the actual matrix onto which all the other messages are mapped. It uses a prime number sequence to help orient the observer with each line. So again, this is transmitted as a continuous signal, a one-dimensional line. How do you turn it into a two-dimensional line? Well, you notice the prime number mappings going down the side. You think, there are breaks here. Maybe I should arrange it as a rectangle instead. What do we learn if we do this? The initial messages that then follow this very blank schema are, and must be said, classic Linkoffs. They show us how to represent numbers in multiple different ways before moving on to demonstrate different kinds of arithmetic using these number schemas. We are told how to use algebra, logic, to express different kinds of relationship between various kinds of quantities. The high point of all this is a meditation on the nature of space itself through the use of circles and triangles, distances and areas. So equipped with these formidable tools, we can then at last begin to delineate something of the human world, at least as we might begin to understand it. So we have a sequence dedicated to time, its division into discrete steps, and crucially, the changing of states from the past and into the future, as made recordable through these steps. We're then introduced to a pair of human actors who at first discuss notions of history with one another, about the retelling of past events to help make sense of the present and perhaps even the future as well. The actors think about their own position in space and time, and from this, what does it mean to be situated, of how they know the world in different ways from their own different positionings within it. They then talk about traveling, about their ability to move to different places, of how they come together, but also how they drift apart. The actors use this as a springboard to consider, what does it mean to have social relationships? They use various flatland-like analogies drawn from geometry to show us how some are left outside of certain social circles. There is a third actor, it's very much on the outside of their perimeter. They tell us about how there are implicit hierarchies and barriers in our social relations, that they are not all together as one happy family. This provides us with a space for a rather lengthy discussion about competition, of a striving against one another with states of victory and defeat. Nonetheless, this rather bleak scene perhaps leads us to another more positive consideration of cooperation, of an exchange of objects and resources, because we can. The actors then tell us something else, that there are other kinds of sentient beings in the world. There are animals, which they try and fail to talk to, but they interact with them nonetheless, and they enjoy their company. They show us too that animals variously cooperate, compete, and communicate amongst themselves for their own self-determined ends. Finally, we move on to another kind of agency, the material agency of machines and computation, of deterministic mechanisms that can be used for calculating and ordering the world, taking heavenly symmetries and imposing them down on the world below. In contrast, however, we are also then shown how these same mechanisms can operate in other ways too. They can produce effects that are not reducible to their functioning alone, that they can be emergent. So in short, what the actors show us is that they recognize the unpredictable unfolding of physical reality more generally, of how all material formations generate a cascade of possibilities with every turn. There are new potentials always, new ways to see, new ways to know, new ways to be. The messages then close with a lexicon of every character that is used throughout, repeated endlessly, a beacon of structured information, indicating that yes, astonishingly, there is someone out there amidst the howling darkness. They are sending you a signal, fragile, delimited, a chance to listen, an invitation to respond. That, in short, is my own reading of signals at any rate. I hope you enjoyed learning a little more about this admittedly very unusual project of mine. And I thank you very much again for your time this evening and for listening. Thank you very much.
Wow. Just wow, Richard. That's so cool. And, you know, I thought I had some really interesting thoughts at the beginning, and then you just said them anyway, and it was like just really interesting. Such a cool book.
Thank you very much.
I'm so happy we got to put it out in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the questions at the end. Okay, let's move on to Astra, who also has an incredibly cool book and an incredibly interesting process that she's going to talk about. But I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to let her do it, and I'm just going to introduce her very briefly. Astra is a poet and an artist who has performed and exhibited internationally. He has numerous pamphlets. Oh, just rolling over in pamphlets is Astra. You had that. Was it a visual poetry exercise book that came out recently on Penteract?
Yes.
Yeah, and Bunnies Behind Bars from KFS, and of course the epic Astropolis from Hester Gluck, and the beautiful starry Stargazing from us, which I think Luke might put a link up for as well. Yeah, Luke. Cool. What else? Also Poem Atlas. I'll mention Poem Atlas, which is also, Astra's baby. It's a publisher and a online exhibition forum. It's also you've also done physical exhibitions, haven't you, Astra?
Yes.
Most recently in Greece.
Mm-hmm. And we've got actually Simon as well, who was in the exhibition. Susie was in the exhibition.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, quite a few people here.
Cool. Anyway, I'll hand over to you now. And yeah, cool.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that very warm introduction. So guys, I'm not going to lie here. The excitement is real. So I'll just try and contain myself, right? Thanks, Richard, for your wonderful talk. And it's lovely to be launching our books together tonight. Thanks to Sarah and Luke for making this, this launch and the publication of Constellations possible. And also I can see loads of friends in here. So I saw there's Patrick, Helen and Simon. We've got Charlie. There's Stathis. I saw James and Chris. So Bob. Loads of lovely faces in the audience. So thank you all so much for coming and dedicating this evening. To listen to a few poems. Right. I suppose what links the two books that Guillemot have published, because I might as well just do a plug for stargazing as well, as Sarah said, is stars and the universe. And it's one of my favorite approaches to poetry is, I suppose, the act of stargazing. And before I say too much about that, I'll just start with reading some poems from stargazing. And I will attempt to share my screen because they all have visual qualities, and I think that you might enjoy actually seeing the poems while I'm reading as well. So bear with me, I'll try to share now. So guys, is that working? Thumbs up? Perfect, perfect. Across the room, there is a window. A person suffering from insomnia approaches the wall opening. They start rolling up the blinds of the window, and stars slowly appear in their night sky view. Stars in the shape of asterisks. Letters come to tell a story about a father and a son, but only part of the tale is visible. We only see what's in front of our eyes within the perimeters of our limited vision. Same spectrum. Another 2 a.m. in a still Aegean, an invisible nothing spreads its prison of light that shrouds eve, ever dark ripples and echoes of shoveling buckets of stars can sometimes protrude screams of, to sleep or not to sleep, my mind is verse without beginning or end, and governed by definite laws, while the skies suddenly turn on. Genesis. Metamorphosis, perspex slides, redshift, brightness, and beyond. See into sky through my fingertips, a lateral ataxia of thought, and bearing from sky back to see asterisms within asterisms, tales of fathers and sons and failure and the illusion of control. Constellations are arbitrary and our vision is impaired. Dark force. He whirls softly into the trans-dimensional slipstream where battles continue and bodies shift and simmer like fine silk. Still alive and well and talking, two pronouns and a vehicle as an inevitable exponential continuity of temporal arrangements lost in spear spell, then threatening to teleport to safety. Suspended. From one dimension to another, prisoner to eagle in motion, broadside after broadside, ancient oddities across airspace. The answer is terse and to the point. Cascades of skyship collisions caught up in a vortex no more, headlong into cloud covers, speedway after speedway, the carvings they've come to life. Afroflights. Shining through the night sky, meteoric caresses and David godlings in the cluster shadows of insomnia binds matter together, growing black hole gardens in, growing starman garments in my concrete balcony, whilst fighting the holly in rhythmic pulsations through the naked eye. Torture comes and torture goes. Synthesis. Momentary yet artificial. Aerial escape. 3 a.m. moon dust on my window, Daedalus. Bare arms cannot fly, neither too low nor too high. Morrow on many a moonlight, morphing into delusion, and I dream in trappings of transcend, disordered cosmos anticipates, eclipse droplets obscure view. Where is now Daedalus and sun? Looking for stars in the seabed. Northward. Out of candle wax and feathers, some break free from the eye and float around towards the birth of synthetic gods and the shifting sands of gravitational possibilities, metal rich enough to form rocky planets and other friendly messages that often call you to sea, only to drown you with their song. It's dawn. Up in the sky and out over the Aegean Sea towards freedom, for here he is now flying high alongside his father, beyond labyrinths and minotaurs, and gliding down, then up towards the sky, zooming back down, then up again, edging nearer and nearer to the sun, until there was no more sun left, just Ilios' revenge. Look at the asomatous heat wave, the ancient fortress pointing out to explicit states of emergency. He climbs to cruising altitude, swooping low to skin the surface of the sea, as sudden to cause another rough landing, fires merciless punishment to those violators of his laws. The warp blasting inwards, he falls. Dear planet, now gently into that good night, he hangs from a string like a little low earth, then drops into the well shaking the foundations of my under subconscious. We are living on borrowed time, heading for Lilithaka and other mythical microcosms. The ocean reels to deeds of daring for aerial acrobatics. Apotheosis. The thoughts, the dates, the nights are cosmic dust of dark energies expanding at an increasing rate in an attempt to hold on to this space-time curvature of word line. At times, we contemplate its vast, persistent, stellar chirping and prevalence of acute insomnia, tearing into shreds until it too disappears in zero-day exploits. Epitome. From black to whitish blue, back to the future's most distant vision of our potentiality, telescopes and retinas as you see the earth rotate after dark. The poets sleep while the world time lapses into wingless tomorrows of matter together in the past and afterlife, webs that link pieces and void together. Burning Serenade. And as he falls into the sea, I fall asleep while Ilios is reaching out to me. So thank you for listening. So that was just a glimpse from Stargazing. And I'm going to now talk just for a minute or two about my approach that sort of links these two book babies. So stargazing as a poetic approach. Stargazing is a gesture of reflection and discovery. Stars, like words, exist at an absolutely astounding number. That photo evidence. Words twinkle in the darkest of peplums as we gaze. In the same way that the darkness of the night sky allows us to see the light of stars, it is through the darkness of the world that we can find meaning in language. So now, before I read from Constellations, I thought, we could play a little game. Well, I've got my three favorite constellations that I would like to share with you. And I hope that you, if there are any constellation enthusiasts over here in the room, if you could put in the chat your favorite constellation, and I'll tell you mine with a few fun facts about the constellations. So number one, look at this beauty. That is Pegasus. So Pegasus is a prominent constellation in the northern sky, named after a winged horse in Greek mythology. And if you don't know that, God help you. You might remember the Disney film Hercules. Do you remember that little horse Pegasus? Too cute. So the constellation is one of the older ones known in the night sky, apparently. It is one of the 48 constellations listed by the 2nd century astronomer Ptolemy. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. It's Ptolemeus in Greek. The constellation is famous for hosting the first exoplanet ever found around a normal star, as well as a galaxy known as M15. So that's Pegasus. Number two on my list, although there's far too many, and it was really hard to narrow them down. But number two is Draco. Oh, look at that beauty. I mean, that is something else, right? The name of the constellation is derived from the Latin term draconum, meaning huge serpent. And the constellation literally snakes its way through the northern sky. So the name Draco has been linked to several dragons in Greek mythology. Again, the Greeks, anyway. In one of the accounts, from the Greek mythology, the Athenian goddess Minerva took Draco by the tail and put it into the sky during the battle for Mount Olympus. And I think that story alone needs a poetry collection, you know, maybe one day, who knows, or one of you might write it. And then number 3 is Scorpius. I mean, another beauty, right? So that's one of the brightest constellations in the sky, apparently. In astrology, the constellation is called Scorpio. And by the way, I got this from a, national, I think it was a National Geographic website or something. And after, because I saw that, about the constellation being based on the astrological sign, they made sure to say after astrology, astrology is not a science. And, they put it out there, so that made me laugh. Yeah, because it's not, I suppose. But so we back to Scorpius. So it is the 8th sign in the zodiac, and the traits of those born under the sign are said to include determination and loyalty. So if there's any Scorpius, let us know again in the chat. And now let's move to constellations. So here's the cover. I mean, I just put it there. Hardback, cloth bound, glittery. What more do you want, right? It's too beautiful. And I hope, if some of you might order it, I do hope that you enjoyed. So before I crack on with reading, there is a poem in the sequence that I'm going to read now, because I've selected quite a few. And the name of the poem is called Trapped. Whoever guesses, because the lyrics, a lot of these lyrics are taken. So I've taken found text from David Bowie lyrics, a lot of them, and sort of played with them. So there is a poem in there called Trapped, and it's a very easy one. If you're a David Bowie fan, you will know which song it comes from. So if you do know it, put it in the chat, and I'll send you a free copy. So to the first person that finds to which song the poem Trapped borrows some of its lyrics from. And now with the book itself. So when stars, stars within constellations, within constellations, they've got so if a star is bright enough within the constellation, it's given its own Bayer letter, and those Bayer letters, of course, but back to Greece, they're lettered, using the Greek alphabet. So what I've done in the book is that I'm giving you a suggested reading followed, based on that system. However, the words are quite flexible. So as you're reading these, you might want to tweak them as you like, because they're quite flexible. Oh, and here is the alphabet for those who don't know. Although I know Stathis, for example, he is from Greece. We might have some other Greeks in the room. And I'll start with I was stone and he was wax. A quiet Pegasus, like a ticking bomb, but with eyes. Temples. As we went inside, there was more, and yet more there is. Afternoon, before midnight, after darkness. Trapped, that's the one. Blue, blue, cosmic blue, that's the color of my room where I will live. Side effects. Grains of cocaine across the cosmos. Cassiopeia. Moon otherness, echoes persistent, first stellar chirping, then space-time silence. Dolphin fish. The outskirts to fade, but then We ran into the sky sea. Dragons have been bled. You appear in windswept plain, irregular processes, right angles, transitory. In the back of a dream car, 20 foot long, run for the shadows, never look back, walk tall, act fine. Jingling. And fourth, she might see a half then, a fully realized star. Body language. The echoless room of dark through her fingertips. Cloud loom. The sky's wind, swish it wet along its path. A bigger splash, diving in pearled layers of a charred seabed. Swarm seething murmurs, sting in unbeat slow from variable angles, six healing. Cosmic psalterian. What sky, what alabaster, what fragments of shard, what echoes of Centauri. Slosh and ramble, swept back in your spell, shaking hips and cuckoo eyes, bound in sky tide, laughed insane, horned and swollen. Tangles of cloud. A herd of thunders, muddied slipside to reveal, and again, warp and weft. See hearing the gentle untangling of imaginary looms as our eyes close and wisp the air. Torture tattoo, plaited, spindle, whirl, meshwork, resembling. Dead loop and all. The hue of collected planets I trace, counter mask, open all night. Like tiny flakes, weaving of mists, wisps around the bend, hair veils, seashells in torrent, across the sky bed. And the last one, which is actually the last one from the book as well, is called Floodlit by Stars. Sapphire chalice, ice rest, it holds sacred last breath. I now return to you. Thank you for listening.